Hey everybody, Tommy here, World at War Comics, and I have an amazing couple of guests that have been on the podcast before, and they're back again to talk about their issue 4 that drops Tuesday, January 14th on Kickstarter. I will have the link below, so just go right below and check that out. Go ahead and hit that notify button on their Kickstarter link. That way you get notified as soon as they go live on Tuesday, and I'm hoping that you'll be one of the very first backers for issue number 4 of California Inc. An amazing story. Just imagine if California broke off and became its own organization. Just think what could be going on. Here are the first 3 issues that I have. Here's issue 1. I cannot wait for issue number 2. Dave Law on art is next level. Art Ebuen is incredible. I even got them to sign it at WonderCon last year when they were there. So issue 4 drops this Tuesday. Check it out. Without further ado, here is my conversation with both Dave and Art. I know you're going to enjoy this. We had a blast, as we always do whenever we get together. All right, everybody. Hope you're having a great week, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for stopping by. Hello, everybody. Welcome to World at War Comics. Back again, my 2 good friends, Mr. Art, Mr. Dave, creator, writers, artist of California Inc. Man, so good to have you back, and I cannot wait to talk about issue 4 coming up very soon. Well, before we get into that, how are you both doing?
Fantastic.
I'm a little nervous because we're following up Daniel Warren Johnson's interview from yesterday. I was like, when I saw you post that, I was like, "Oh, we're up next." Well, it's the opposite for your readers, for your audience. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
No, man. You know what's funny is he'll tell you, man, I'm just an indie guy. You know, even though he's doing Transformers now, and of course he's done Wonder Woman and a few other things, he's about as indie as it gets, and I love that, man. It's so good for our community to have someone like a Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossimo as well. He's done so much,
Yep, true.
even though he's spent a lot of time at DC on the art side. He's done some pretty awesome indie stuff too. So that's why on the podcast I try to get a mix of both to kind of help out the indie community because people will come maybe for Daniel and they're like, "Holy crap, I've never seen California Ink before. This looks dope." And then hopefully it adds to our community and helps build it because I will tell you, man, I go to the comic shop. I bet you 60% of the books that I'm buying are indie, right?
Yeah,
Meaning not the big two. And not that I don't, I love the big two and I still buy stuff, but I tend to feel like the best stories right now are happening on the indie side. And we were talking about Kamikaze right now and the guys over there, and they do such a good job of
hmm
supporting indie creators. I know your title's there, my title's there. There's quite a few of us that, they give a few shelves to local indie creators, and man, we just need more of that from comic book shops. I think that could be amazing because there's some good stuff out there that a lot of people will never see.
yeah. I mean, going back to Warren Johnson, if you haven't read Space Mullet or Do a Powerbomb, do yourself a favor. Go pick one of those, both of them up, and if you have no feelings reading it, you have no soul. Just putting it out
100%.
there.
I was telling him, do a power bomb. I was teared up through that. I mean,
Right?
incredible, man.
I
It's
gave it
heart wrenching.
I gave it to my son. An illustrator in training himself, and I was like, "Hey kiddo, pick this up." He's not a kid. He's 15. I was like, read this, and he's like, "Why?" I'm just like, "Just it's a good comic. It's really good." And like it takes him a while to crack open a book. He's going through school and stuff. He comes back to me, hands it back, said, Daddy, that was really good." I was like, "Yeah, that's really good, right?" I'm all that's one of those writer illustrator guys who has a lot of heart. It's a lot of training.
And just from a nerd standpoint, to read the first issue of Transformers and Optimus Prime is doing a suplex. It's just that kind of stuff is so cool. Yeah, exactly.
G1 fan right here. I don't know if you could tell.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, man. No, I love it, man. But yeah, it's just so good for our community to have people like that have just put forth such a high quality product, and it just brings eyes to everybody, I think. And that's what we need in our
So
community.
we're gonna keep talking about. I know you just interviewed him yesterday, but it was really cool to be at the Eisers and watch him win those awards. I'm like, well deserved, well deserved. Go get that. That was sorry. Dave's like, can we talk about our book?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, no, no. Uh, I'm
Uh,
just jealous that you were at San Diego Comic Con and I was at the actual Eisner's. That's awesome.
yeah, it was
It's
awesome.
it's tough though, because being on the floor all day and then going to the Eisners, by the time you're done, it's like after party, I'm like, I'm in my 40s. No. Can someone hit me over the head so I could fall asleep now while you drive me home? Because I'm tired.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Every time we're at conventions together, Art's like, "Come on, guys, the night is young.
Is
Yeah,
that, is that me?
we're
Is that
getting it
right,
on.
man?
Come on, let's go."
Art doing the horns? That's a thing.
Is that you, Art? Wow.
It doesn't even look natural me doing this. The closest I get is reading a Daniel Warren Johnson book. That's me being as rock and roll as I can get.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Nah, man, it's so good. Speaking of cons, before we jump into California Inc., we were just talking about Emerald City. We're talking about WonderCon. Maybe we could just start. We usually end with this, but let's start with this. Like, what is the plan for both of you from a con standpoint? Around California Inc. and where are you going to be so that fans, if they did pick up the Kickstarters in the past and they want to get a signature, they'll be able to find you.
Let's see. Confirmed so far, I have WonderCon, Emerald City Comic Con, and Comic Con Revolution. Um, uh, Applications haven't come out yet for Rose City. Waiting to hear back from C2E2, and I'll try again for New York Comic Con for the first time. Again, don't know how that's going to go. It's all curated, so understandable, and hoping to get off the wait list for San Diego Comic Con. It's my hometown. I've been going to Comic Con since it was at Civic Center, where you could just walk in for $5 and it was just rows of long boxes, and now it's this massive mecca for Hollywood to peddle its wares. Which, hey, without it, our economy here in San Diego wouldn't be what it is. Without it's the amount of money that it brings in is ridiculous. It's great for our
Insane.
city. So I'm not talking smack about Comic Con at all.
It has kind of changed though, like I don't know how to say it, but the character of it has changed over the years,
A
right?
little
Which,
bit.
which it's great. I mean, it's still bodies and people are walking the floor. So hopefully, those folks are picking up some titles from creators and artists. But I find that a lot of them are really just there for the Hollywood side, which is great. But it does kind of change the dynamic from. I mean, it's called a comic con, and I feel
Yeah.
like the comic is no longer the leader of that event, which
I
kind of sad, I
It's
guess.
strange. Yeah.
I could well it's funny between all the cons that I go to table at, it does the best for me in terms of indie fans outside of Emerald City Comic Con. That one probably has the best indie, like, hey, I'm looking for indie books.
Oh wow.
But
I think it's just that big that it even with all that Hollywood fervor,
yeah,
still I had the same experience. There's still a good amount of indie people there in the mix.
it
Yeah.
was scary that one year when what movie was that? Mystery Men. And I remembered Marvel was about to file for bankruptcy, and Comic Con wasn't even filling all the halls. It was the point where it stopped at hall. I want to say not H or G. It was, H is the end. It was like before G, and they had the Mystery
Wow.
Men bus out there, and I remember thinking, "Oh wow, they couldn't even fill this part up." And I think that was the same year I was walking around, and Stanley was just kind of sitting behind a table, and I was like, dude, you're Stan Lee. He's like, what up, kid? And I was like, he didn't say that, but
Yeah.
this is
Sounds
before
like something you
everybody.
would say though.
Yeah, yeah. So I whipped out like the only Spider-Man book I had in my bag. It wasn't even bagged and boarded. I was like, would you sign this? Like, give me that. And he signed it. And I walked in like Stan Lee's just sitting there. Yeah, and then of course they wore him down with signatures towards the end of his time, and that was really rough to watch too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I like how I bring it up and then I bring it back down hard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all
nice,
good.
nice,
I feel
nice
like
to
I'm
bring this party down.
yeah, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
reading a Daniel Warren Johnson book.
Oh, but man, it's like the good kind of down.
It
You know what I
is.
mean?
It's so emotional. That's what we were talking
Uh,
about. The moon is following us, and I don't know if either of you have started that one yet.
Not yet, not yet. I'm
Oh
waiting on that one.
gosh, man, it just tears your it tears at your heart, especially if you're a parent. So I won't give anything away, but boy, it's
Dude,
good.
Powerbomb did that. Oh
Yeah, I
man,
know.
he went after that again. That son of a. Gotta go get it now.
Yeah, no, it's that good, man. So I think issue five
Sick.
comes out in 2 weeks, and it's 10 issue series. So
Yeah. So now that you said that, I know I'm gonna wait till the collected edition comes out because
I think a lot of people
I'm,
will.
yeah, I'm gonna binge and just ugly cry at the
Yeah,
end.
Exactly. Go hide in a corner so no one sees me cry.
Or we just call that every Saturday night for me. Just in general, just "Ugh.
I love it. I
What's
love
wrong with
it.
you? I don't know.
Well, let's jump into California Inc., man. I'm a huge fan. Love the title. So here's issue one, two, and three back here. I think I had you on with your issue three last when you were starting your Kickstarter, if I'm not mistaken. But if you're not reading this title, it is incredible. The art, Dave, is awesome. I'll go ahead and open up just issue one since we're already on issue four. So hopefully I'm not giving away too many spoilers or anything like that. But just the art, the penciling, and then the colors are just incredible. The action scenes are amazing. Absolutely love it. If you want, why don't you give the elevator pitch for California Inc., man? I love it.
Yeah, in the near future, California becomes a corporate country with factions fighting to shape the new nation. I don't know if you've heard, but if you could tell that I've said that quite a few times.
I think all over the West Coast, you've probably heard that at a con near you. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, the art is insane, man. The storyline is awesome. And now we're jumping into issue four, which finishes this arc, right?
Correct, correct.
That's incredible, man. So the Kickstarter will go live next week on Tuesday, the 14th. Already you're at 100. And let me just see if maybe one more person popped in right when we were talking. You never know, right? Okay, still 135. But man, that's an awesome way to kind of start your Kickstarter. Let me go ahead and share the screen so people can take a look at it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the notes below, make it very easy for you to head on over there. And from now till Tuesday, let's hit that notify button. Just hit this link, and then right where it says saved, it'll actually say notify. And you click that, and you will get a little note as soon as this goes live. So you could be one of the first to back. And I mean, you're getting a complete story within this arc, too. So if you're new to California Inc., you could pick up all four issues, I assume, right?
Correct, 100%. So that's kind of one of my frustrations every once in a while. I love shopping on Kickstarter and finding a new to me story. And it's like, oh, this is on issue three out of, four coming up. And I'll jump on the Kickstarter looking to back one, two, and three. That's a great opportunity for me to catch up and then for them to make a little extra on their Kickstarter. Then there are no options to get the back issues, even digitally. And I'm just like, so as a user myself, I want to make sure that we offer that to anybody who might be new to our series. Is if you've never ridden, who's the writer? Not me. If you've never if you've never read the story, you can get one through four both digitally or physically as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will tell you, you will not be disappointed, man. I love this kind of what if scenario. And we
Is
kind
it
of
a what
talked
if?
about, yeah, exactly. Is it? I don't know. We'll see, man. Yeah. I try to stay away from politics, but man, who knows, man? That you never know what's going to happen, man. Everybody has gotten so crazy and divided over everything, which I get, man. Emotions are high. You never know, man. We could have the state or the country of Texas, the country of California, the country of who knows what, man. But this is definitely a really cool what if scenario where California does become its own corporation, and it is a lot of fun, man. It's a blast.
Did you hear? I believe it's the Prime Minister of. I hope I'm getting that correctly from Canada, jokingly saying, "Hey, you're trying to buy us. How about California, Oregon, and Washington? You join us. You want free healthcare?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's firing back. She is
Oh yeah,
firing back. Like, oh
yeah.
no."
I think
And
she was. They don't call it a governor, but she. I think it was Alberta, if I'm not mistaken, said that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
To kind of combat everything
Yeah,
that our
it's just
incoming president is saying about Canada and Greenland and Mexico. So I think she said, "Yeah, I got a better idea." Which I
it's at
have
the
a
same.
feeling those states would be down for it too.
It's just kind of funny that these politicians are just trolling each other. Like it's just like
I
it's the
feel like
world
that's
we
what
live in.
all
Yeah,
politics are right now. It's trolling,
yeah.
right?
Yes,
It's all
yes.
trolling, right?
100%, 100%.
That's the funny thing is social people are comfortable with social media and how it functions when 80-year-old leaders in countries are creating memes and trolling one another. You know that we've kind of crossed that line to where there like is no age that's not familiar with that type of banter on social media, which I think is hilarious, man.
True, true,
It's
true.
funny. I'll talk to my son about some of the like just in general the bullying and attitude of middle schoolers because he's in middle school right now. And oftentimes I'm like, man, I'd like to say that it's going to be done when you graduate, but it's not. It's totally happening, not only in the workplace, but in politics and just with world leaders in general, which is
I mean,
so it's good to learn to deal with it. I'm always telling them because it's going to be there everywhere.
Everywhere.
if you have an online presence, you are available to be made fun of.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I can't, was it Mike Tyson? He has a certain quote, and I'm going to mess it all up, but in general, he's saying how brave people are sitting behind a computer saying certain things because you can't get punched by saying it through a computer. If you're in front of me, in front of Mike Tyson, you probably wouldn't say those same things, especially him, right? So he obviously I chopped that all up. So someone in the comments going to go like, "Dude, you're an idiot. That is not even how it goes." But in general, I believe that's the message that he gave, which is hilarious.
It's a great point, and I think it's really like it's the same with when you're driving. When you're driving, you're just like,
Mhm.
I got there's another car that can't hear you. It's like you just feel so distant.
Yeah.
I think it's a real problem because we see it on the internet like it's right, like you're standing in front of me, but they say it like you're not there, and so it's just creating so much division.
It
Yeah,
really has.
keyboard bullies don't know what it's like to really get. You've seen those pranks, those prank guys online, and they when they do eventually get punched, it's like it's for a video. I'm like, that doesn't stop that what you're doing is stupid. I will still continue. I will continue to punch you because it's happening for real. I don't care if it's for a
Yeah.
video.
I will say there is a small amount of joy when someone does pop one of those people because it's
Small.
so, yeah. I'm being,
I stand up and applaud.
I do too, man. To
Good old
do
days.
something like that to try and get some sort of reaction for a video, I just think is so cowardly, man. I don't get it.
But us watching it gives them the engagement, and then they actually get the.
100%.
I'm like,
You
oh,
can't
I'm feeding
stop.
it. I'm feeding
Uh,
it.
yeah, it's so addicting, And we had a conversation. I can't remember who I was talking to, but it's crazy how if you have a video that is very positive, the engagement on that positive video is so low. But if I
Hmm.
start saying stuff about California Ink and art and Dave and all this negative stuff, all of a sudden, man, engagement goes through the roof, and it's crazy how negativity just drives engagement amongst people. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever be fixed. I think it's just human nature. And like you said, Art, we kind of fall into it sometimes, even though we don't agree with it. We're watching it, so you're actually feeding the algorithm when you do that. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's terrible, man.
And every time they get a view, they get paid, right? The more they get paid, so I'm actually paying them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
So okay, how about this? Let's do a freeze frame of the three of us like flipping each other off like we're leaving the podcast, and that'll be the screenshot that you use for promoting the fuck
Yeah,
you. It's like,
exactly. That'll be my thumbnail.
yeah, Dave
Like,
and Art
ooh, what's going on? And
have beef. They hating
You'll
each
never
other after.
believe what this guy says to this comic book creating crew.
Oh, that you'll never believe clickbait.
You'll never
yeah,
believe it.
yeah. Oh my
What
God.
happens next will shock you.
Yeah.
I
You can't.
guarantee if we did that, I bet you my engagement and views on this video would double.
Well,
I believe so.
I believe we have to change the title to something like that. Just
Yeah.
Okay, so it's you will never believe what Dave was wearing underneath the shirt. Got it. Got it.
Well, I
Nothing.
know of 135 people that will jump on that video for sure. Like, who am I buying a comic from, man?
Well, you don't know until you really see what's under his shirt. I mean,
Exactly.
can you really buy that comic from him?
Does he or does he not have a third nipple? I need to know.
Exactly.
I trust
Is
anything
it
he's drawn.
is it pierced?
Yeah. Marky Mark, right? I think Mark Wahlberg has 3.
Oh, I mean he's pretty strong, so I'm not gonna like.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to get beat up
I'm
by
not trying
him.
to challenge that
That
shirtless.
was always one of those rumors online.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to California Ink.
Sorry.
I went off a little. Probably my fault. I instigated that, but But let's get back into issue four and kind of talk about the process for issue four. And what is your feeling knowing that this arc is ended? Do you feel satisfied that you were able to tell that entire story from an art perspective and from a writing perspective through four issues?
I'm proud, Dave. I think that what happened was we made it without influence and we completed it without influence. So like we've seen other writers change their story as they've heard responses to try to either feed it or combat something. We knew what we were getting into, and we have stayed absolutely true to what we had planned. And it was actually completed. We wrote it, finished writing it about, or I wrote it about 4 years ago. It was done when I met Dave. It was done. So and Dave didn't go, I need to change this part. I mean, he changed some of the storytelling in frames, but he's kept pretty damn true to it too, and complimented the hell out of it too.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, it was a fully fleshed story, which is, and one of the things I really look for in projects that I work on. And like, I don't know about you, but I've seen many scripts come by, and people looking for an artist, and they've got, like, well, oftentimes they just have an idea, like a concept, but lots of times they'll have the first story, but it ends on a total cliffhanger, and they're like, well, I'm not quite sure how it's going to go from there. And you're like, that's cool. That's cool. I'm not like, that's better than nothing. But I really love that Art had it fully understood. There wasn't this great concept that he wasn't sure how to end. He had that figured out. But that being said, while some of the characters, they can't continue onward, there are characters in this story that I would love to see. I feel like there's definitely another arc that could be in their story. And so, yeah, like I've when you finish drawing a book like this, you're like, yes, like it feels good, that sense of completion. But now that I've kind of been looking back on it, and and then also reading it from beginning to end, which feels really awesome. It's just, you do start to go, oh man, like I would love to see a little bit more with this character. Even some of the kind of ancillary characters, like there's these two dudes that are kind of just hanging out on their porch. I love these two guys. And they're just chewing the fat, they're kind of giving each other guff. It kind of reminds me of, like, I'm sure, like, it's just someone, either Art or someone he knows, extrapolating on to like a later date, but they're sitting there and they're just talking and they're kind of arguing with each other. And then they observe something that, maybe they shouldn't have, but it's their story. In my head, I'm like, well, I'd kind of like to know a little bit more.
That's hilarious, Dave, because you know where we're going. We are doing a spinoff, but that is hilarious because those two guys, I think between you and me, we could do a fun little like monthly strip of like one page thing for them, and we put it on our socials, and we collect it after about 3 years. That could be pretty damn hilarious with those two. Oh, I never thought about those two having their own thing.
I mean, they're different, but they kind of remind me of the two dudes like in the Muppets.
I was thinking that, right?
Very Odd Couple. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Dave, that's hilarious. I didn't think twice about that one.
That's such
Tommy,
a good idea.
We'll go ahead and kind of, I wouldn't say break the news, but we're working on a kind of a spin-off ish story on an I'm writing for an anthology, and so I pitched writing a side story for California Inc. based off of Big Sis and LB. And so we have a side story that's going to be 3 parts, so 3 issues in this anthology, which we will announce in probably about a month.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad
Yeah.
that it's continuing and that we're going to get more from this world that both of you have created. That's incredible. And I love the idea of, a lot of the comics, this happened when we were kids too, but I feel like DC and Marvel have kind of gone back to that, where they have their mainline story, 24, 26 pages. And then in the back, there's a short story of like 6 or 7 pages. And they're really kind of exposing that reader into something that's coming up down the road. But you could utilize it in that same way, where you have a page or two. And like you said, Dave, kind of digging into these guys to see what they're like off the porch, right?
Dude, those two,
You even
oh
call it
man.
off the porch, man.
Just two old like best friends just arguing. Oh my gosh, that's the best, Dave. I'm not even kidding. After this call, I'm gonna start writing down some possible conversations that those two are having. I'm dying inside. This is hilarious. I love
That's
it.
so cool, man. I love it. I love it. That is awesome, man. That is awesome. Well, now we're into issue four. The arc is complete. We're about to hit some Comic Cons. It looks like from when we were talking earlier that issue four, you already have gotten everything complete and it's already in the printers or not quite yet.
Yeah, it's out. It's done. I took a gamble and I sent it off. Kind of looking at the history of how we've been doing on Kickstarter, and I just out of my own pocket went ahead and put it through for printing so that hopefully it gets in time. It arrives for us in time for Emerald City Comic Con, and then Dave and I usually meet up at WonderCon. He'll get his copies in, or maybe he'll want it sooner, and I'll chuck it over, skyhook it. Good old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar style from San Diego to San Jose.
Just drive it up there real quick.
Yeah, real quick. Just
Yeah,
yeah,
we're in California. It's all right next to each other, right?
kind of
Yeah,
small.
everything's close.
Yeah.
It's like Texas, real small, real small.
Real
Yeah,
small.
it's like Texas.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I will tell you, man, if you've never driven from Southern California to Texas, it is by far the most boring drive you'll ever take in your
Tommy,
life.
I've driven from the 10 in LA to the 10 in Jacksonville, Florida.
You did the
And
whole
so,
thing.
yeah, Florida itself, I mean, sorry, Texas, you're right, is the long, and I would say boring. It wasn't actually boring, it was beautiful, but it was the longest chunk. And then the next longest chunk was when you hit the panhandle in Florida. You're like, I'm in Florida. And then my cousins here in Jacksonville are like, no, you get another 14 hours, dummy. I was like, dang it.
That's crazy, huh? How big some of these states are. Oh,
Yeah.
it's insane, man. I mean, we talking about California Inc. being its own corporation. We kind of talked about this the last time you were on the show, but if California did become its own country, I believe it has the sixth largest economy in the world. If
We're
it
at number two now.
is it two now?
Yeah, when I wrote it, it was six. And
Wow,
then last year, 2 years ago, it was like maybe three. Now it's two, the second largest economy in the world.
that's crazy. That
Isn't that
is
wild?
crazy. That's insane. I mean, I know I left California, but I will tell you, man, if you outside of everything that's going on right now with the fires, which it's devastating for that community, but if you love 65 to 75-degree weather, 340 days of the year, San Diego is amazing. Like I
It
don't
is a
know
bubble.
another place in the U.S. that has that kind of climate with so little variation in weather. It's like almost perfect. It's
When
I
I
made
moved
the
to, God, good.
Oh, when I was living in San Diego, I made the decision to ride my bike to work every day. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ride my bike to work every day. And it sounds hardcore. It was so easy. I think I rode in the rain once, and it was like it was like
someone
a
in
mist.
Seattle would
You
laugh at
even
you if you
really
called it
call it
rain.
rain?
Yes.
When I,
It was the easiest.
Yeah, I grew up here in San Diego, so I didn't realize how much of a bubble it was because I even moved to LA, which isn't too far. But when I moved to Boston for school, I was like, not only was it a culture shock, it was a weather shock. I was like, why am I sweating when it's raining? I was like, this is not normal. How is it hot during the rain when it's raining? And also like, what's this cold stuff everywhere? Uh, and then I didn't realize how thick my blood got from living out in Boston when I came back to San Diego, and I saw people wearing scarves and hoodies at 50 degrees. I'm like, it's hot. What are you doing? This is not. They're like, it's cold. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not cold. And then now it's thinned out again. So
Yeah, exactly. Incredible, man. Incredible. Yeah, so I mean, this is really exciting, guys. I'm gonna have the link below. California Inc. issue number four, the complete series. You're gonna be able to get your hands on this, and I'm gonna reread everything once I get my issue four. Because as indie creators, right, we're trying to put out a book maybe a couple times a year. So to go back and refresh before that issue four gets in my hands is gonna be a lot of fun. And man, anybody who's watching this, you got to get your hands on this. It is such an amazing title. And I have a feeling because of how well it is done from an art perspective and a story perspective, I have a feeling that if you wanted to, this thing could really blow up, man. It's such a cool
oh,
theory around your comic book, and everything that you put into it, both of you, is It's one of the better indie comics that I have read for sure. It's that
Oh
good.
man, that's nice. Appreciate you. You got a great book yourself, so
Thanks a
that
lot.
that comes from that's some high praise from somebody who's got a great book himself.
You
So
guys are killing it, man. You guys are killing it, man. So,
You know,
just go ahead, Dave, please.
oh yeah, it's interesting you talk about reading it, in order, and I've had the kind of the privilege of experiencing this story in a few different ways. I read it as a script when there was no imagery, and then I've spent a lot of time making the imagery. And oftentimes when you're drawing a comic book, the scenes feel much longer, and like the characters feel a little more well-rounded because you're just spending so much more time with each panel. But sometimes I think it gives it a different feeling. But having now finished it and then gone back and reread it, it really like, to Art's credit, it really flows so nicely. And in between each book, it has a great build. He has a great sense of the rhythm of telling a story. And the four combined, just it really, I found it was even having created it though, then consuming it and reading it on its own and kind of as a bystander, I was really impressed with it, especially like I said, the way the story was kind of put together. Because sometimes I just, I'm drawing what Art tells me to draw, and then seeing seeing it
Uh-oh.
in its
Uh-oh.
finality.
hold on, you make it sound like I was sitting there like over your shoulder, like, is that where you want to put that line?
Yeah.
Is are you sure about that angle? I
That's a
mean,
pretty big smile. I said grin. That's a big smile.
I said slight eyebrow raise. I didn't say like they're wincing.
Can
We
we
do the whole thing.
just from an independent standpoint, I love the camaraderie and the partnership that you both have. And as a reader, when you're reading a comic book, especially today, because artists it's global, right? So you open up a Batman comic right now, you have Chip Zdarsky, who's Canadian, who's writing it, and you have Jorge Jimenez, who is in Brazil, doing the art for it. They both speak two different languages, although I know Jorge has been working on his English because he's in the US constantly going to shows. But you could tell that they really like one another, and as you're reading Batman, it comes through. And you've seen others where not necessarily they don't like one another, they just don't know each other. And when you read it, you could kind of tell that maybe they're not on the same page in every panel because the words are saying one thing and maybe the art isn't really backing up that message within that
Hmm.
panel. And with you two, I feel like there's just this flow. You understand each other. You understand where the story started, where it's going to be in the middle, and where it's going to end, and it really comes through. Can you talk about how important it is that communication and collaboration between writer and artist is in order for a story to really have the impact on the reader that you want it to?
You can take that, Dave.
I'm gonna.
It looked like you were leaning in a little bit, so I was like,
Like I think me and Art do get along really well, and I think I think that was important, and it was a good thing. I think we're also kind of lucky that we met each other, and we do have that great chemistry with each other, and then decided to work with each other because I think a lot of that was still we even though after we decided to work on this book together, there was still a lot to get to know about him and what he was expecting from the book and from my artwork and just in general what he was expecting from me. And so there was a little bit of feeling that out, but I think we've seen a lot eye to eye. Communication has been really good. We've been able to go to a lot of conventions together and hang out, and I think with each book, we've got to know each other a little better, and kind of and vibe what each other is trying to get across. Yeah, I think it was it felt very natural, and I think some of that might be luck, but also the fact that we have been able to hang out together. I came and actually stayed with him in his house for a few days while we went and visited a bunch of comic shops. So I got to meet quite a bit of your family, like not only
yeah.
his kids and his wife, but his father-in-law, and
Yeah.
it was cool, and I think that is important. You're right, and it does make it more. I feel more confident in trying to do some things that I don't have to necessarily get his thumbs up or thumbs down. I know he's gonna like it, or it'll be a fun surprise for him. And yeah, I think it's kind of a shame that it's a nice thing that people can work from such large distances, but making a comic book definitely is a collaborative effort. And the better you know who you're collaborating with, the better it'll be for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as Dave said, the kids know him as Uncle Dave. You know, especially Abby. Abby, my youngest, loves her some Uncle Dave. She loves seeing his videos of him doing his yo-yo thing because he is amazing at it. You know, and that does matter. Getting along does matter. As you mentioned, you know, you could see when people don't get along, it shows in the work. If someone isn't into it, it shows in the work. If they're really into it, it shows in the work. And you know, when I saw Dave's work and I approached him, it's because I like the work. And I'm not gonna say, "Hey, Dave, draw the way I see it in my head." It's like take the story that I have here and make it gooder. You know, make it like Dave it up. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of cool to see what I thought I saw in my head, but his point of view. So it becomes our book, you know, and seeing his version of what I scripted out is always like a fun surprise. One of my favorite things to do as a creative in advertising is throw an idea at somebody and see what they come back with it. You know, because it's just if you're just making people what I call a human mouse, you know, like you tell them what to do with the mouse on screen. It's like why even bother having a partner if you're not going to let them shine? Like you pick them for their capabilities, you found them, you befriended them, you did everything to partner them because of their capabilities. Let those capabilities shine and let them surprise you, and it becomes something new together. And Dave's been able to do that. There's some times where you've gotten those texts from me, Dave. I'm like goosebumps, just goosebumps. You send me like a page. I'm like, I remember one time I was at Disneyland and he sent me a cover page and I was in line for something. I just stopped and I was like, and I think I held up the line because it was the cover for issue 3. I was like, everyone's like, move. I was like, oh, sorry. I was shocked by how amazing the cover was for 3. So yeah, I think it's fun when people surprise you with their expertise because that's what they are. They're experts. So let them do their job.
Yeah, that's so good. And I, from a reader's perspective, you can tell. And I think that's really important as the story is being told and you're reading it for the first time, you could certainly tell. And, you know, all you got to do is create one comic book and you realize that, especially from a writer's perspective, like obviously the story is important, but the art that uplifts that story, I think in some instances might be a little bit more important, right? Because it's such a visual way of storytelling that, man, if the art is off a little bit, it could really affect your ability to follow along and really
Yeah.
get what you want out of the story. And when those two things jive, oh man, it's magic, man. It's magic. So congratulations on that. Your story flows so good and the art's amazing. You could definitely tell that both of you have worked together for a while now. You actually like one another, which is great. And you could tell, yeah, exactly. You could tell. You could
Comic
tell.
Cons.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
look for us after hours at the local Marriott bar, just doing
Yeah,
this, just drinking.
exactly. Yeah, especially in San Diego, man. $15 beers at the end of your day,
Oh,
man. There goes profits, right?
oh man.
Wait, hold on. We do this for money?
I know exactly. I didn't want to bring that up, but yeah, I have never met a rich comic book indie creator. That's for sure.
Most of us have side jobs.
Yes, very much
I'm
so.
sorry, main jobs.
Yeah, I like how you call it a side job. I think it's the other way around for me. And then, you know, just because we're all indie creators, man, I would love for both of you just, you know, if someone is trying to get into the indie scene and they have a story that they want to tell, what advice would you give a new creator who's jumping in this for the first time?
Let's see. Considering I'm new, at least I don't. Can I still say I'm new, Dave? Because
I don't
no.
know. I don't. You know what?
No.
You're 4 issues in now.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, yeah,
good.
Give
yeah.
up that status after at least after the second
Yeah. So,
one.
I mean, my advice is I've actually changed careers quite a few times. And the hardest part about starting any new career or any new venture is feeling like you're finding your people and feeling comfortable. And the hardest part, and I was actually talking to one of my nieces about this. She's in college and she's trying to um, do that terrible word network, right? And if you just don't think of it as networking and you're just a cool human being trying to meet another cool human being in the industry, it won't sound like I'm trying to network. And so one of my favorite things when I was first learning how to the different facets, and I'm still learning it of the comics industry is I meet someone because I want to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it's just, I'll walk up to the table and say, this is great. And I'll ask questions, but not in a, hey, then can you give me a job afterwards? And, oh, can I pitch you my story? It's so creepy when people do that. They're just, it's like, oh, you came to talk to me, but you weren't here to learn. You just wanted to tell me about you and what you're doing. Where my thing is, I was just trying to find my people. And so I'd go to what looked like an interesting story. I go, oh, this is really cool. What motivated that? And it would actually motivate me to write a certain way. Or, you know, what did you, what got you to do that? And how did you find blank to work with, you know? And then you just kind of keep that cultivating that relationship authentically, not just again for the sake of networking. And Tommy, that's how you and I met. You know, you came
Yeah.
over to my table and you said, "Hey, this is great. By the way, I do a podcast. Would you be interested?" And then we found out that actually before that, you mentioned that we both have kamikaze in common, and we started talking about what we have in common. And then you kind of gave me your cards. Hey, by the way, if you'd like to be on a podcast, I'm it's like, yes, let's do this. You know, we were promoting our issues, and I would say put yourself out there because you're going to do that anyway with your art with your comic. But just put yourself out there and meet people, but be fucking cool about it too. Don't be. I mean, I did some weird things because I was still new at it. I got two like, hey, my name's Art. Da, 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 here's my thing. And then I noticed that was getting a cold shoulder. Where I remembered when I was getting into advertising and I was getting into animation, it was really just I would take classes, I'd meet people, and we all came up together. And then in advertising, I took internships, I met people, and they found out I worked hard and they pulled me in. So I was like, okay, comic books the same way, any industry is the same way. Meet people, find a way to connect with them authentically. They might not be the way in now, but they might know somebody who says, "Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a blank. Oh, I met, Art. He was cool. He's not, it's pre-vetted. He's not that weird, just a little bit. Give him a call."
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Just
I
a
can
little
vouch for
weird.
you. It's not that bad. Trust me. No, you're so right, man. I don't know, Dave, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Sure, I can give it kind of the artist's perspective in that what I always tell people to make what you want to make. So like if you want to create indie comics, make an indie comic. If you don't write, find someone who writes and just make it. Like don't get too hung up on like rights and getting it and like how who's going to see it or who you're going to pitch it to or any of that. Just make the craft, make the thing. You're going to be making a ton more of them if you do wind up working in that industry. So just get started and just start making it. And I even found I made quite a few comics before I made any money on them. Like it was all just going through the school of making comics, and you really can't learn how to do it well unless you're making a ton, and you're not going to get hired unless you can make them well. So it was just I remember at one point I'm thinking about like how do I make this kind of portfolio, or what should I focus on, this kind of materials, or should I just do this and then finally I was like, I'm just gonna make one. I'm just
Hmm.
gonna make it because that's what I want to do. I'm not gonna necessarily if I'm not sure how to do something, either I'll talk to someone who does, or I'm just gonna figure it out on my own. And I think that was like the best move for me, like rather than trying to fit myself into some other a mold that people are telling you have to be in order to make money in this industry. I just kind of was like, I'm gonna do it how I want to do it, and I'll figure it out from there. And I think that seems to be the way for most people, because it is such a strange world in that there isn't there isn't a hard and fast way to be in it. It's mostly when you figure out your niche, you and you get good at it, and then that's when it kind of works. So, yeah, I think if you want to do indie comics, make an indie comic, and make as many as you can, and don't worry about
I'm
the money
gonna
yet.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that. That's a great point, Dave. I remember part of my struggle with any industry that I try to change into is until you make the thing, people treat you differently. Kind of like comics. When I was walking around with just a script, I was an idea guy, And until I made my first comic, then and had the physical issue number one in hand, I'm sure Tommy, you felt this too. As soon as you had issue number one in your hand, conversations became different. Like, oh, you could actually execute. You can complete an idea and you can get it done because it's a lot of work, and you found out. And oh, you're going to do more? Okay, we're going to have conversations with you. So, um, and there's less barrier to entry these days. I remember when I was first learning animation, um, if I couldn't just go make a movie. I mean, I could, but I would. That was back then when you hand drew each thing, and I had a camcorder and 2 frames per second. I'm sorry, 24 frames per second. Each frame shot twice, so 12 drawings per second. And it would take you months to do, and it'd still take you that long, but you'd have to try to find time to book the room to shoot it. And where now kids can set up their phone and they could make animation on their computer. There's less barrier to entry these days, for comics, music, writing, anything. You make it. If you could make a movie these days with just a phone. It won't be the best looking, but if the story is strong enough, it could still be a strong story. So great point, Dave. If you want to make something, make it, and then more people will actually talk to you once you actually execute.
Yeah, I think
Great
it's a
point.
great way to get feedback too, right? Is to
Hmm.
actually do it. And there's a group of people that love giving feedback. So you're going to get plenty of
All
feedback.
the internet.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, on the internet.
That's
But
very
you
true.
bring up some really good points because I do believe, like I've met some of the most amazing people. Like you said, just building a network of other creators and artists and letters and all that colorist. It's been amazing how awesome this community is. And a lot of times we focus on the maybe the one or two people that are just not that friendly. I have rarely found anybody who is not willing to at least provide some really good advice that from someone who's already gone through this. They'll
Hmm.
warn you about the pitfalls. They'll warn you on the costs. That's the one
Hmm.
thing that you should all know is that if you want to do that, it's not cheap, right? And so you better be very passionate about it, and even more so, you should be really given to your story because it's not something you want to just dabble in because it's an expensive way to get poor very quickly if you're not given to it. I'm just saying, man, it's not cheap, right? Especially if you want to get a good artist, you want to treat your artist well. I've never negotiated with my artist. Whatever my artist says is the pay rate, the page rate. That's
Note
just
to
what it is.
self.
Yeah, yeah. Right. You know what I mean? Because the reality is, man, like you saw Dave's art, which Dave, your art is amazing, man. And you knew like this art would fit my story so well. And when you find that, right, I mean, you want to make sure that that person, in this case, Dave, is happy with what he's being paid to be able to produce that. And that's for any artist. So, yeah, there's just so much that goes into this. It's easier, but man, it's not easy at the same time. I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like, I don't want to say easy. It's simpler to jump into it because you have Print Ninja, you have Tiger Printing, you have Kablam, you have Comic Wellspring. Like there's so many tools today to create your own comic in a very simple way, but it's not easy and it takes a lot of hard work for sure.
I mean, I'm production too. Like, this is way cheaper than making a short film. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, just me as a producer, director, thinking about how much it'll cost me to book, a small crew for a day, and that's before writing and before getting, props and craft for the day. It's just like, and then you got to not deal with, then you got to pay for editing, of course. Like that's, um, you get yourself a little movie here. We got a 96-page story, which is technically a 96-minute movie. Like we have
yeah.
an hour and a half movie going on here in theory. Uh, and with all the explosions we want, that costs us no price of explosions.
Yeah, yeah. I always say the comics are the poor man's movies or
Yeah.
poor man's
Excuse
filmmaking.
me. The filmmakers look through comics to find their Walking Dead, to find their Preacher, their Sandman. They
Yeah,
look through our comics to find their next property for
they
sure.
do, they do, but it's because we can make them, dollar wise, it's so much cheaper. And like the explosions, I think is a good one. Like why I think science fiction works so well in comics is like
Hmm.
it really doesn't cost any more to have an entire fleet of alien spacecrafts attack a major metropolitan area than it does to have two people having a conversation in a room. It's like I mean, as the artist, it would take it does take more time to do, but for the most part, it's still the materials, it's all the kind of the same still,
I just got flashbacks of animation when they would say something like, and the crowd bursts into song. I'm like, oh, or gunfight ensues. I'm like, oh no, I gotta animate that. Like 3 words, a gunfight ensues. I'm like, 3 words equals like 4 weeks of animating. Like, get
Are
out of
you
here.
serious?
I always think about that when I watch the monorail episode of The Simpsons. I'm
Yes,
like, oh man, I imagine they hated this episode.
but it's Conan O'Brien's episode, so you can't get mad.
It's
He's
amazing. It's
yeah,
it's a masterpiece as
yes.
far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I can see how you would be like, ooh, these are.
Can you imagine animating all those like just in sync people kicking, just the Rocket style, like
Yeah.
just oh my gosh.
Da.
I'm getting hives right now thinking about that. Oh man, and that's why I'm not animating anymore. Oh man.
That's awesome, man. Well, guys, California Inc., Tuesday the 14th. Make sure you get over to the Kickstarter. Everything is below. Man, and then if it's okay, Art, I would love Dave to give you a couple minutes. I know you're working on some things outside of California Inc. Do you want to kind of let fans know what you're currently working on and when they could expect some of that stuff as well?
You asking both of us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we actually, as I mentioned, we have the anthology thing that we're working on, and oddly enough, I wrote a horror story, a short story for an anthology with another buddy of mine that might be coming out by October. And then Dave, I'll let you unveil the one that you're working on under Studio 12/7 as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me and the editor Justin, we're working on a story called West Side, and it's a dark noir kind of detective story, and that we'll be doing under the same publisher that we've been doing California Ink on, and Studio 12/7. So that'll be a fun story to work on. It'll be a different kind of story again, and I think that's kind of we're trying to make some comics that are different from what most people are seeing out there, and this will definitely be that as well. Although I think it's a great subject that has been a very interesting subject in most other genres, not so much necessarily in comics, but everywhere else. The concept of these kinds of stories, I think, are really good. They're just really awesome. They're really interesting. So I think it'll be cool. It'll be a different kind of experience for comic readers.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so good that you are doing other things as well because the fans of the writing and the art, right? You don't have to wait for the next arc of California Inc. in order for you to experience Art and Dave and some other things. So that's pretty cool. Real quick, can I talk about the approach of an anthology as opposed to putting forth, a full cover? Like, is there a different mindset that you both take when it comes to short stories like that?
Yeah, this was kind of it just kind of worked out. I was invited to be on a future kind of noir kind of anthology, and uh, the one putting it together, the artist, I mean, the creator putting it together was like, hey, I think there might be something you could write, maybe in the world of California Inc. or not, and it'll fit in the story. And it's funny that we talked about characters you want to explore, and Big Sis and LB were a character I wanted to kind of reach back and kind of look back at and kind of connect a little something based on issue 3 that I wanted to explore. And so it's one of those like when you hear a comedian kind of start a joke and really dive in for a long time before they do the punchline, it's kind of that. Not that it was a joke that I want to work on, but it was just something about a relationship that I really wanted to explore, and I was able to write a 36-page piece on that. So it'll be broken into 3 issues. So the anthology will be ongoing, but for the first 3 issues of the anthology, you get a 12-page, a 12-page, and a 12-page of this California Ink story in there. And so being able to kind of break it up into 3 bigger acts, and then those 3, you got 12, and then you got your other 3 acts in there. So it was a different approach for sure because I'm used to my 24 pages and then the four issues, but thinking of it as a giant 36-page issue, but finding those middle those sections where I can cut it off and still make it feel like, oh, I would. It feels like it's a good place to break was a little bit of a challenge, but it's fun, you know, like the 6 page horror story I had to write was a challenge. She was like, what can I do in 6 pages? And they're like, it's a challenge. And like, I took it. So it's always a fun kind of thing to do to be given parameters, you know. If we don't have parameters, everything will be gold foil embossed and, you know, it just we'll have it'll come with, you know, keychains, you know,
Yeah.
just who knows. We need
Beautiful
parameters.
outside, empty inside, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How about you, Dave? With anthology, have you done some anthologies from an art perspective? Or are you doing the art for what? Art for
Yeah.
art?
Yeah, yeah, I will be doing the art for that one too, and I
Sweet.
have done I've done some other anthologies as well. And I love anthologies. I think they're a little bit of a quicker project, and like we were talking about, you expand your network by quite a bit usually when you start doing that. And the exposure that it helps get with all the various creators and their fans kind of potentially learning about you, all of that stuff I think is great. And I do love, I mean, that's, I think, what, one of the things that I really enjoy about comics is that the parameters, as Art was saying, is it's constantly changing, whether or not you have a long timeline or a short timeline, or you're using color or you're not using color, or you're, you know, you're working in this distant future where anything could exist, or you're working in the present where you have to really work. All of these things I think help kind of define what the comic will be ultimately. And as the artist, I like that because that really does change the piece for me. It makes it so that I'm not making another Space Auditorium. I'm not making another Wolf Punks. I'm making California Ink. And it just naturally becomes a very different comic based on those parameters. And I like those. And I think an anthology tests that. Early on when I first started doing comics, when I was working on the Space Auditorium, me and Chris did a chat. It was like, what was it called? It was I think it was called the 5x5 or 3 by something like that. But it was like, I believe it was 5 days, 5 pages.
Cool.
And we decided and they gave you a word, a setting, and a phrase and an object. And you had to include all of those in it too. So, you know, and it was all fairly like loose. And given the Space Auditorium, which is this other story I've done, is this kind of wacky sci-fi story, it's very easy to kind of manipulate those things into a story like that. So we had a lot of fun with it. And having that time frame was just so invigorating. I love sometimes when you're just like, okay, for the next 5 days, I'm eating and breathing and just existing in comic book making, and that is I'm planning to just do that, and that's what it's going to be. And that kind of just kind of massive overdosing of creativity is a lot of fun. I think it's just something that I think all creatives should try sometimes. I always think about like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They did the album Blood Sugar Sex Magic, where they supposedly just locked themselves in in a remote house and just
There's
made that
plenty of
album
drugs, I'm
over.
sure.
Yeah, and lots of drugs, you know. But you know, and I loved that. I love that they just kind of submerged themselves in their creativity, and then just made it. Because I think that that's sometimes when we do tap into those resources in our heads and our subconscious that do create these memorable stories or memorable experiences, whatever it is we're creating.
That's
Yeah, that
awesome.
reminds me of the 48-hour film festival. Have you heard of that? Where they give you a prompt and I think a character, and you have 48 hours to write, shoot, edit, and and then they put it like in an auditorium for everybody to watch you participated in it. And it's I've done it once, and this is before I had kids. No, I think I had one child. I was like, this is too much work.
That's intense.
In in 48 hours, I was just drained by, you know, but day three, and I'm still sleeping, you know.
I would think in both instances, though, you really are forced to exercise muscles that probably don't get exercised enough. You know, especially in the indie scene, right? You wrote these four like the whole arc, right? You had that story before you went to Dave. So the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for you, Art, but I feel like the story it wasn't complete because obviously as you start to go through the comic, maybe a few things change, maybe you have to pull back a little bit, maybe give a little bit, but the story is still there. Whereas if you got 48 hours, man, you're really exercising a lot of these skill sets that normally you could stretch over a few months in 48 hours. I would think that's something that all of us as creators should experience at some time, just so you get really sharp at some of those key elements that go into good storytelling or good storytelling from an art perspective. I don't know if you agree with that, but I could
Yeah.
see that being super beneficial.
That's important because that's something that we all learn in our own trade, whether when I was drawing or writing, is you don't get faster. What you do is you get quicker at understanding where you're going to not make that mark or where you're not going to choose, when you're sketching, you warm up with circles or whatever, right? But soon your circles actually become just a couple rotations rather than 10 rotations because I'm already editing in my head before I hit that mark, and same with writing. I might have a few ideas, but I'll knock out a few ideas. I'll cut them out of my brain before I even put it down. Yeah, you're paying for the experience that you've learned to edit sooner, but also learn to not cut out too many things too fast because you don't want to over edit yourself. But yeah, that short a time, I can't imagine 5 pages in 5 days. That's just so Chris was writing the next page as you were just about to like, wow, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, we have it. I have it on my website, like for the Space Auditorium. We have it as one of the free bits that you can read.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it wound up we wound up creating a very memorable character that we still have in the story now, and it was just it was just one of those like really exciting creative experiences that, like I said, I feel like it's important for everyone to kind of experience if they can, as a creative, as someone who creates, to have that kind of really compressed timeline versus the longer one.
yeah,
Really
yeah,
kind of teaches you creative.
yeah. Yeah. Can I do
That's awesome.
this?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Like I said, I think everyone should have to go through that. And I don't know. I think that just makes you just so much better at what you do and explains why you guys have such an amazing title, man. California Inc. right here, issue one. You can pick up still issue two and issue three. Obviously, all four will be available on Tuesday on the Kickstarter. So make sure you get over there Tuesday. Make sure that you back this amazing campaign. We're going to blow this up everywhere. All the links are below. I'll put all your socials so you can follow Dave and Art as well. But guys, I always love talking to you. You know, you're always welcome here, man. Sorry, my light went out. I realized I was like a floating head because my shirt is blue, like the background. It is not the greatest head to be staring at without something else kind of taking some of the. Anyways,
No, you look great. You look good.
I was
Yeah,
looking like, dude,
I like the neon sign in the background. It
Yeah,
looks
yeah, yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
but seriously, when that light went out, I couldn't see. Like, I was like, dude, my shirt matches the background. This is so weird. Feel like I'm floating head or something.
I was like, oh, this is noir Tommy.
Yeah, I know.
Tommy
I
Noir.
did I did an interview one time where I experimented with having like a different like some of my artwork as a background. And it was this image with like all sorts of stuff going on, all these weird characters.
I
And I
remember
realized
this.
like after the fact watching it that I had this drawing of this tiny little top hat on someone that like it in the whole interview it looked like I just had like, men on film kind of hat just perched on my head.
Hey. Oh my gosh,
Hey
that's
there.
hilarious. That's
I
hilarious.
remember that. Oh, good times. Remember that time? Remember that time when Dave had the thing on his head? Remember that time? I remember it right now. That was good times.
Awesome. That is, I mean, terrifying to go through, but awesome afterwards, man. That's so
I
cool.
think Dave, I'm gonna use that as like your biopic on the site.
You have to send it so I can use it for my thumbnail, Dave.
Can you imagine? What's funny is I didn't notice till you texted me that screenshot, like slowly zooming in on it. It was like you texted me and Justin. You're like, look at this. Like, was I wearing a top hat the whole time? I was like, oh my gosh, you
Top
were.
hat, a miniature top hat.
Yes, it was like on the side too. It was that's
Oh,
I could see it. I was like, oh, yeah, it's just there.
brought back some amazing memories of In Living Color, man. What an amazing.
uh, How revolutionary was that show? Come on. Oof.
So far ahead of everybody else with that. I don't even know if you could do that show today, man. It's so awesome though. I go back and I watch some stuff and Homie the Clown and oh my gosh, man. Just I don't
Did
think
you
so.
did you hear they're the ones who started the big Super Bowl halftime thing because they knew that Super Bowl halftime was when people logged off the Super Bowl. So they created an episode during the Super Bowl, separate channels, and then people were like, "Oh, let's watch The Living Color," and then stopped watching Super Bowl. So the
Wow.
Super Bowl started doing their giant extravaganza in the middle to keep audiences captivated. Isn't that
That's
amazing?
crazy. That's
That's how
amazing.
strong. That's how strong they were.
Yeah,
Dang.
if you're not in your 40s and you didn't grow up watching In Living Color, man, go back and watch some of these episodes. It was comedy at its finest. Jim Carrey's kind
When he
of
was James
breakdown.
Carey. Yeah, he went
Yes.
by James Carey then.
Jim
Oh
Carrey,
man.
yep.
The
I
token
remember
white
him
guy on
doing
the show.
yeah,
Yes.
no, there's a girl too. I can't remember her name. The lady who is hilarious on that show is white too. But yeah, there's only a couple. But remember his Vanilla Ice?
Yes.
Yes. And
His shoe went
his
flying.
his weightlifter,
Oh,
Vera DeMilo.
yeah,
Vera
weightlifter.
DeMilo.
Oh
Oh my
god.
God.
or
His little pigtails. Oh my God.
or
Nightmare.
Fire Marshal Bill.
Dude, Fire Marshal Bill is classic. That can still happen today. That
That
one
still
is
can
not,
happen.
and it'll still be funny.
Or when he's just doing interviews and he's like going down fake stairs and then coming back up and he's just doing all kinds of crazy stuff as they're doing an interview. They
Oh,
were so far ahead of their time. It was just
yes.
so awesome. I don't know how we keep
Oh.
getting on these tangents, but that was amazing, man. That was amazing.
Oh man.
I have that ability, guys. I'm sorry. Awesome, guys. Well, as always, I love it when you show up, man. You're welcome anytime. Big fan of what you've produced. Once again, California Inc. This Tuesday, the 14th, we go live. Links below. Make sure you go there and back. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, man. As always, I appreciate you and hope I get to bump into you, man. I would love to go to WonderCon and see you there. So fingers crossed I'll be able to make it.
Yeah,
But
and at the end of WonderCon, one of these. We'll do
yes, I'll
that.
be coming up like,
Yeah, after WonderCon, just
yeah.
Yeah. Rage it out with art. Yeah.
and Dave.
Love it.
And Dave.
Yeah.
And Dave, yeah.
We'll paint Anaheim red. It'll just,
And spend way too much money at a Marriott bar. I love it. For 2 drinks.
Cut to just the three of us sitting at a taco shop, just
yeah.
real quiet and tired, just enjoying food. I would actually love that. Just to,
Me too, actually.
pass the hot carrots, please.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk, just pass them.
Yeah, give me my hot carrots and a roll of toilet paper so I can just do my nose every 2 seconds.
Accurate.
Accurate, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
man. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate you, man. Until next time, I hope you have a blessed week. And we'll do this again soon, my friends.
Thanks, Tommy. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you, guys.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.